product services offerings to the farmers. So the entire AGRA team is here. So I welcome Nixon, Qureish, Assan, and Shalmini. Correct? Yeah. So the first one is regarding introduction on the session. So Nixon gonna give setup of the entire thing. So Nixon, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Those online and those with us. This session, like the one who went before me said, is influencing farmers' ability to use products and services offering for farmers. And we have two use cases that we want to discuss with the greater team. One session is on findings from the study that was undertaken on digital insights for growth in technology diverse agricultural landscape. The study generated data to report on a set of indicators meant to measure reach, availability, and also access to and the quality of digital agriculture solutions. Specifically, the study was looking at one, identify enablers and barriers for adoption and active use of digital finance solutions among smallholder farmers. And number two, developing and testing solutions to leverage enablers and overcome barriers to increase adoption and active use of digital solutions. The second use cases that we are going to discuss this afternoon, we'll look at the key success points in the integration of climate advisory services using phone-based digital messaging system in Nigeria, in partnership with the National Meteorological Services. This part of the study was a wider productivity on looking at a wider productivity on especially on women empowerment in Kaduna area. So I want to welcome you to this session and also welcome the speakers. I speaking to you is Nixon Gecheo, Senior Digital Officer, AGRA, and one who will share with us the first use case is Qureish Noordin, who is Senior Agronomy and Extension System Specialist, and he will be joined by Shalmali Gaisas, who is a Senior Associate, Busara Center for Behavioral Economics, who also are partners in this study. We'll also then have the second use case that will be shared with us by Assan, who is a Senior Resilience Specialist with AGRA. We want to welcome you and now welcome Qureish to take us through the first use case. Welcome.
Sorry. Thank you, Nixon. Good afternoon to you all. I also take this opportunity to welcome you to this session, which we'll do jointly with Shalmali from Busara, who undertook this study. Increasingly, we've seen African governments investing more in digitalization of extension systems. You know, the challenge that we have in extension systems in Africa in terms of extension farmer ratio, reach becoming a big issue. And that's why many governments now have started investing in digitalization. So at AGRA, together with governments and other implementing partners, including private sector, has taken this up. And we've complemented the extension services of ministry through what we call an approach that is private sector led through village-based advisors or community-based advisors who are self-employed but work within the government systems. It's not a parallel extension system. So digitalization is going to be key. And for us, the learnings are critical because use of digitalization, use of VBAs or CBAs has been shown to be very critical because we still need boots on the ground. Farmers at different levels, they might receive messages first, trust becomes an issue, but if the VBAs are there, trusted, they quickly pick up some of these messages. We saw that even with one of the digital players that we were working with, AgriBot with Microsoft, farmers were being blasted with messages, they were not taking it up. But once they got the messages from the CBAs or VBAs that is genuine, we saw these numbers rise. So at AGRA, we've had several digital interventions, a key being one that Shalmali will talk about on Farmerline in Ghana. We have another big one with Cropin, digital solutions in 6 countries. We've uploaded like 8,000 VBAs across 6 countries with 2.1 million farmers, and now bringing in the private sector. So as I said, learnings for us are very critical. And these CBAs, as I said, self-employed. So they either work with input companies or off-takers as agents, and they earn a commission, or they make a markup. So for example, if they work with a seed company, they get the inputs at a lower price. If it's $1, then they sell maybe $1.2 and make this 2.2 on top. And we've seen big impact, especially when it comes to demand creation, and especially when now working with farmers to pass information in extension services. So they do quite a lot of work, as we said, inputs, aggregators, they also aggregate. And now ICT is becoming a key issue, and service provision. So the VBAs, apart from just providing agricultural messages, knowledge, we've seen that farmers can't pay, or farmers won't pay just for knowledge. It has to be a bundle of services. So the VBAs have several revenue streams to make them continue with this work. They are a bit different from the normal community extension workers who depended on incentives from the government or a project, let's say like bicycles, airtime. With the CBAs, in West Africa, they are known as CBAs, community-based advisors. In East and Southern Africa, more village-based advisors. But critical is that they work within the government extension systems to generate a revenue to continue doing the work, at the same time having this public good. So understanding how they work, because it's, as I said, it's new in terms of these VBAs being extension agents, is critical for us so that we can continue learning and inputting. So we've had several studies, some by Tanaja in Nigeria, Burkina Faso, on digitalization with VBAs, and now the one by Busara. So Shamali, please.
Thank you so much, Nixon and Qureish, for setting the scene. My name is Shalmali Gaisas. I'm a senior associate at the Busara Center for Behavioral Economics. For the last 3 years, with funding from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, we have been working on a grant known as Digital. The abbreviation is right up on the screen. And one of the objectives under this grant is to design and test solutions to increase adoption and use of digital products and services among smallholder farmers. And given that Busara is a behavior science research consultancy, we are leading this work stream. I would just like to point out that because Nixon did mention that one of the grant objectives is to measure the reach, access, and availability of these digital products in various areas. We do have other objectives under this grant. I would be happy to talk about it beyond this session. So don't hesitate to reach out if you would like to know. What we recently did in the last year is that we conducted research to understand enablers and barriers to adoption and use of Farmerline's digital products and services. Quickly about Farmerline, it's an agri-tech organization headquartered in Ghana. They offer several services to farmers such as agro inputs, assets financing, farmer digitization support, as well as best practices, market access, and so on. And what Qureish has been talking about, Farmerline operates via a network of village entrepreneurs, who are known as community-based advisors. And this is great, right? Because it's private sector led. These CBAs are essentially able to establish themselves as entrepreneurs, earn commission, and they carry out a variety of functions like Qureish has just been discussing with us, right? From like input agro dealers, they also aggregate output. They are the solution providers for ICT at the grassroots level. And they also provide other services such as threshing, mechanization, like making tractors available and so on. The reason that we are mentioning this is because it's very interesting how CBAs have really revolutionized and solved the problem of having a knowledgeable support on the ground. But through the Farmerline research example, we are going to look at how the trust in CBA can have other types of behavioral adoption challenges, and we will be looking at that. At Busara, we conducted this behavior change research with zonal officers who are the office bearers of Farmerline, the community-based advisors who are the agri entrepreneurs in various villages, and of course the end users, which is the smallholder farmers themselves. We followed a 3-step approach, which means we first did a qualitative deep dive to really understand what is the lived experience of using digital products and services and be able to identify the barriers. After which we conducted co-design workshops with the farmers directly so that any solution that we come up with to target the barrier is already locally and contextually rooted in the lived experience of the user. And then finally, we tested these co-design solutions to verify if they actually overcome the barrier or not. Farmerline offers like a range of services, right? For the sake of this research, we focused on 3. One was the digital data collection, which the CBAs undertake, and they upload it to their merge data platform, which is important because it's this information on the platform that is used to offer tailored training and advisory services. Second is we focused on extension and advisory services that are done via training sessions by zonal officers, and they access this content and curriculum via the merge data application on their phones. And then, of course, we looked at the third important thing, which we ended up prioritizing to really study within the Busara research, was the automated voice messages. It's like an IVR system where farmers were able to call a certain number. And then just like IVR works, depending on the problem they have, they were to press a certain number and they could hear an automated voice telling them the solution. Now, I will not go too deep into what are the enablers and barriers that farmers face, because I think we have been discussing them adequately since this morning. Many people have, wonderful speakers have highlighted them. I would like to focus on these 3, which Busara prioritized to sort of design solutions for and then test those solutions. One of the enablers was that there was a willingness to learn more about the Farmerline services when the benefits of using the service were made clear. Like in addition to social proof, in addition to trust in the CBA and all of that, there was a willingness to learn more when the benefit was salient. That was one. And then there were 2 barriers, one nested within the other. Let me explain how. We diagnosed that there was a growing lack of trust in Farmerline due to unfulfilled promises, something like a previous negative experience, something that farmers were expecting, but it did not get delivered, and that led to growing distrust and so on. When we unpacked this barrier a little more, we realized that this distrust is rising because there is a gap in perception between what Farmerline can do and what Farmerline does. And this is important because I think Qureish mentioned the role of CBAs. At one time, a CBA is representing more than one digital service provider. It's not like they work only for Farmerline. But the end user, who's the farmer, they shouldn't really care about this. It's not their job, or it's not right of us to assume that they should take on the mental load of remembering which provider are you representing. But because the CBAs represent more than one digital service provider, the farmers are not able to identify, okay, the CBA is conducting a session with me now. Are you talking about products and services offered by provider A or provider B? So oftentimes, farmers would assume that a certain product or service was supposed to be provided by Farmerline, when in reality, Farmerline does not provide that service at all. And this was one of the nested barriers. What we did is we co-designed a solution that highlighted the benefits of using Farmerline, and we tried to incorporate that via automated voice messages. And the idea was to see if highlighting these benefits and sort of having some sort of, the way we look at advertisements on television or radio, and there is some sort of a jingle that plays, right? We remember that music and we associate it to a provider because we hear it in a certain voice. So the idea was to see if something said in a particular way that highlighted the benefits, would it lead to improved recall, improved identification, improved trust, and ability to understand that this is Farmerline, these are its services, this is how I use them, and so on. So what you see on the left is actually, sorry, the text is a little small. What we did is we actually got these messages recorded in the local language in Ghana. And what I have highlighted in bold is we basically made that benefits point really salient as to, right, as you start listening to the IVR, you understand that, oh, there is a benefit for me if I listen to the whole of this message and understand what Farmerline can do for me. And then what we did is we tested this solution that we had designed with the farmers, and we found that on an average, respondents who received, of course, this was an experiment. So think of it like half the group received a message that highlighted the benefits and the other half did not. So on an average, we found that respondents that received the audio message highlighting the benefits of uptake to Farmerline Services, they reported a higher score of information recall. Now, what this means is we had a series of like question answers as part of the experiment to being like, oh, over here, you see that it says, my name is Kwame. If you want to know more about Farmerline, dial 399. The weather today is going to be scattered clouds and there is going to be heavy rain. So then we did like a quiz after this audio was administered to see if people were paying attention and if they remembered or not. And we found that respondents who listened to the benefits audio message, they reported a higher score of information recall. They also had a higher score of self-reporting that they learned something new today. Like they listened to something, they found out about Farmerline, they found out about a toll-free number, and they were more likely to say that, oh, I learned something new today. And finally, when we compare that against the group who heard a very simple audio message that didn't highlight benefits, we saw a clear difference in the trust in the information that was being provided on this automated voice call. Now, we didn't really see any difference in terms of the messenger. Oftentimes, like Qureish and Nixon have been saying that CBAs really drive trust. Like if you ask a farmer, who do you trust in your village? And they'll be like, oh, I work with the CBA quite often. I trust this person. Turns out that in our experiment, for all the farmers who we said that this is the CBA telling you this message, they said highest trust in CBA. Whoever we told that this is zonal officer telling you this message, they said, oh, highest trust in zonal officer, when in reality, it was actually the same audio. We just told them different things as to this is the CBA who's telling you this is a zonal officer who's telling you this. So we didn't really find a difference in terms of the messenger that drove or had any effect on the trust. We have some very interesting gender results, and it's cool because I think the last breakout session was on gender inclusion. I think one was that women farmers were more likely to report that they learned something new from the audio message than the male farmers. They also reported a higher willingness to share the information with others. And this is definitely because women tend to have greater social capital, and they tend to seek out other women networks and their peer networks. Very interestingly, women also perceive higher benefits from using the services of Farmerline, despite reporting self-low efficacy scores. What that basically means is efficacy is if I give you some information and I ask you, are you able to now implement this information on the field, apply this best practice? Like that means efficacy, like you trust your skill and you're able to execute it. So despite having a lower self-efficacy score compared to men, women still thought that, or they perceived the benefits of Farmerline to be much higher than their male counterparts. And one interesting thing here, and I think it also formed one of the recommendations and open to discussion with this group as well, is that women reported to prefer getting their information from their social groups, as opposed to men. If you realize, they have cited all digital sources like television, radio, mobile phones. But women reported that they would prefer to get their information a lot from their social groups locally via their peer networks. And so to very quickly summarize our findings, there were three important takeaways that we learned from this research. One was that making the value proposition more salient for the farmers to be able to identify Farmerline services from the others. And this one way of doing this was to highlight the benefits of using Farmerline services. Second was to implement verified communication channels. So we observed through our experiment that farmers developed more trust for sources that they regularly communicate with. So if I'm a farmer and I work regularly with the zonal officer, I'm going to trust the zonal officer more. And they're more willing to verify misinformation from sources that they're more familiar with, rather than sources that they believe will have the most accurate information. So it's not about, as a farmer, even if I know the zonal officer will have the best information of Farmerline because they are Farmerline's office bearers, just by the virtue of I interact with the CBA more, I'm going to verify my misinformation with the CBA and not the zonal officer. And thus incorporating verified communication channels could go a long way to build trust. And finally, tapping into women's peer networks, right? Because of course, we have been discussing this in the last session, I think also with Assan, that there exist a lot of structural and societal barriers, right? Gatekeeping of women and so on that hinder female farmers from adopting services. And from our interventions, we've seen that female farmers demonstrated more favorable metrics to adoption of Farmerline services, either via better recall, better willingness to share information with their peers, higher perceived benefits of using Farmerline and so on. And thus tapping into women's peer networks could be another good segue to getting more women farmers incorporated into the Farmerline network. Thank you. That's all from me.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Qureish and Fina. We want now to go to our next use case, and this will be presented by Assan.
Nixon, sorry to interrupt. So there is one question for Shalmali, I think, in the chat. Yeah, I think it's a very quick one. The only one question is there. Maybe you can just answer to that. Then we can move to the next presenter. Thank you.
Can you answer that? The question is around.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's fine now. Technical glitches. Welcome to ICT conference. Well, yeah, the question is around, did we understand why there were higher self-efficacy scores? No, we did not, because unfortunately, I mean, it was like a quant experiment in the field. So we didn't really have a qualitative follow-up or a debrief session after that to unpack why women had higher self-efficacy scores than men. Sorry, but I have listed my email in the thing. So if you were to reach out to me, I will be sure to get back to you with any other follow-up qualitative data that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. So can we go to Assan? And then we will take the, we'll have a quick Q&A session after his presentation. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Nixon. Let me start by a quick introduction as they set up. My name is Assan Ngombe. I am a specialist on resilience based in AGRA. My work mainly looks around building resilience to issues or shocks such as those that come with climate change and or environmental degradation or environmental shocks in general. So that's me, a little bit about me. And today I'll be speaking to you about taking research, taking our findings and a lot of things that we've heard around ICT into actual application. This morning in the opening remarks, we heard, I think it was from Dr. Akuku, who mentioned how much information and technology rests within the research and in papers, but where it is needed the most is where we seem to have challenges. So what we've done in AGRA is take some of this information, the learnings from different partners, and try to implement it within some of the work that we do. The project I'm presenting to you is about enhancing agricultural productivity and resilience through improved weather forecast access. And these are insights from a project called the Kaduna Consortium. As my colleagues mentioned earlier on, I mean, the challenges in agriculture, I think a lot of us have spoken about them and I need not repeat them. But key to this issue is the issue of climate change. The climate adds an added complexity onto the challenges that most farmers already have. And in a place like Kaduna, the key issues that we grapple with are extended dry periods, as well as floods. These seem to come hand in hand. There's also issues of pests and diseases, but we mainly focused on issues around the fluctuating rain seasons, as well as the lengthy dry seasons that farmers are experiencing. And within this, our assessment was that most farmers are vulnerable because of their heavy dependence on the rain-fed systems, but as well as the low adaptive capacities within themselves and the systems that support them. Key in this is the low adoption of technologies. I think we all still need to figure out how best to increase adoption of technologies, as farmers are given options of technologies, but adoption rates still remain low. Another key challenge is the loss of employment opportunities or livelihoods that are attached to agriculture systems within the geographical areas we're working in, and of course, biodiversity loss, which is mainly around environmental issues. I think it's important for us to note that ICT4Ag interventions should be situated within existing, or I think that's the next slide. Please move to the next slide. Should be situated within other projects that are trying to tackle issues. So the Kaduna Consortia that I mentioned earlier on is mainly focused on building more productive and stable maize, rice, soybean, cowpea value chains within the farming systems in the state of Kaduna, particularly looking at stabilizing or increasing productivity, as well as looking at how we can create market access to farmers. And within this, we've situated a component that looks at how we can build capacities of farmers to adapt or prepare to shocks and stresses coming from issues of climate change. The next slide basically just gives a geographical location of where Kaduna is towards the north of Nigeria. So it's quite a big geographical coverage in terms of space of coverage. And this has its challenges in terms of reaching farmers in terms of logistics. Move to the next slide, please. The component around ICT is mainly focused on building the capacity, first and foremost, of the extension agents that Qureish mentioned earlier on, for them to be able to interpret, or first and foremost, to receive information with regards to weather, and then interpret this into agronomic practices that they give to the farmers within the areas they work. The key partner in this has been the Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, who have graciously enough agreed to provide this information free of charge. In most countries, we've seen there's been a monetization towards climate forecast information, and that has presented some challenges, but in Nigeria, this has been given free of charge. I think the aviation industry is the one that brought most of the problems with regards to us accessing this public good for free. So we're lucky in Nigeria, we managed to negotiate to get this information free of charge. A key target or focus of this component, again, is to ensure that we, in addition just to providing information, is that we sensitize the extension agents and the farmers on these major climate events, as well as the impacts that they have on the agriculture systems. So there's been a lot of training. It's a heavy on training with regard to how we interpret some of this information. And the training has focused on seasonal forecasts, as well as the capacity of the extension agents on interpreting and the use of the seasonal calendars in relation to the agriculture calendar. The other key thing that we've looked at is that we are aware that there are many applications that a lot of farmers have been given, is to increase the capacity, first of all, to embrace the fact that we are not the only solution, but to increase the capacity of farmers and the extension agents to use other ICT4Ag applications. Another key factor that we looked at is the approach. And I already started talking about this, that we are embracing the other applications, particularly the common ones, social media, Facebook, etc., and how we can, ride on these to deliver information to the farmers and the target value chain players. I already mentioned the issue of training, so I won't go back into that, as well as the issue of the fact that we are so open to the fact that there are other initiatives, and we're also embracing those into this program to be able to create ladders or to create a vertical or horizontal integration of these initiatives in these areas. Key successes, which is the next slide, is that we've managed to establish a very successful link between the CBAs, the farmers, and the climate information, which is the Nigeria Met Services. So that link is pretty clear now. We have data sets that are provided from the Met Services into the Ministry of Ag, into the extension departments, and then forwarded towards the extension agents, who are, by the way, public and community. They're private people, actually. The second success that we've seen is that the information is regular, and we're able to interpret some of this focus into some of the agriculture practices. There's an increased number of farmers using this advice. We mentioned here carefully that there's improved yields. I would rather stick to the word stabilization of yields, because it's really difficult to ascertain yields within a two-year period. So we are moving into a trajectory where we are seeing stabilization of yields within targeted farmers. Over 700 CBAs have been trained. We've seen close to 146,000 text messages sent around the weather-based systems to farmers through the phone systems that we provided. And generally, we've seen some satisfaction around the use of these messages by the farmers. As mentioned by many other speakers before me, there are quite a number of barriers or challenges that we are still facing, which is on the next slide. And these are to do with issues of connectivity, issues of accuracy of data, because sometimes forecasts are made and things don't happen on the ground. I've heard a lot of people talk about citizen science, where we get feedback from the farmers and feed it back to the Met Services for us to be able to localize some of this information, to be able to predict more accurately by building this data set. So this is actually happening because of this project that we've started. The adoption rates are still, we are saying there's a high adoption rate, but we still see farmers next door not applying some of these technologies that and advisories that we are issuing. Resource limitations, there's always a funding constraint for us to reach everyone. I think that's also a widespread challenge that a lot of partners are experiencing. And within these, we've generated lessons, but I would like just to mention one thing, that with ICT, particularly in this area, there's been a need for a lot of face-to-face training to get people accustomed, to get feedback, and also to see how best these technologies are actually working on the ground. So that, to me, that's one of the major key lessons that we've learned. We need to invest heavily on the face-to-face training sessions with farmers, with extension agents around climate information systems. The next slides are basically just giving pictures of some of these trainings. From the first picture there is from the Nigeria Meteorological Department. We see a cross-section of participants. We've mixed training for in-person, the next slide, together with online training, again, for stakeholders within the cities. If you move to the next slide, and these are just showing pictures of the work that we've been doing. And the next slide, which is the final slide, again, just showing the amount of face-to-face time that we've had to invest within this project to ensure that the ICT systems are actually working. So this is by and large the presentation or the experience that we're getting from the ground. It's a 4-year project. We're only in year 2, but it's quite interesting to see where the cost centers are, where our time should be invested, and where the challenges are, particularly on the multitude of applications that are there. So I'll end here, and I'll be happy to take questions or anything to clarify on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hassan. Because of the time, I want to go straight to question and answer session. And even if you have a comment, you are welcome. I see your hand. Maybe you just mention your name or your organization.
Thank you very much, moderator. Gertrude Narubinga is my name. I work with Farm Radio International. To Hassan, thank you for that presentation. It's very good. My comment or question is on, has AGRA looked into using interactive radio to scale reach, to promote knowledge exchange? Because you mentioned that one of the challenges is reaching those different areas. The logistics are not adequate, or it's a challenge, but also knowledge sharing could be a challenge. So I'm wondering, because radio is a trusted resource among farmers in rural areas, and it's affordable to reach millions. So have you considered integrating interactive radio in your approaches? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I get another question? Yes.
Oh, okay, there we go. That's better. So my question is just around the blend between digital and boots on the ground, because rightfully so, you need people on the ground, especially to drive the adoption of these technology solutions. But on the other hand, we're also trying to reap the benefits that ICT platforms offer in terms of lower cost, faster scale, and all that. So how do you balance the two?
Thank you. You didn't say your name or where you're coming from, but thank you. Any other question? Yes, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Washington. So my question is around CBAs who are working for different, let me call them brands in this case. And how do you manage where a particular, you have competing brands basically being pushed by the same person? Because there's a risk of conflict of information and conflict of interest there.
Thank you. I guess then we need to start with those 3 questions if then.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Femi Adekoya. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm actually happy to see what you're actually doing in Kaduna. I would like to ask, what's your scalability plan to other part of the country? I'd like to ask, and I'm also happy to hear that 9 Months is giving you data for free. I wish they can give us too. Maybe you tell us. Thank you.
Thank you. So I want to ask that Qureish start us off with the answers, and then we'll come to Assan. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, on the need to balance between digital and boots on the ground. Sometimes it seems like a paradox because on one end we're saying, okay, we still need more boots on the ground, but governments don't have enough money like to employ, and they want to use like these digital tools, okay? Because the recommended rate is like one extension officer to 400 farmers. Now we say, okay, what if governments don't have to employ to get those numbers, but they use digital means now to reach like one extension officer reaches like 1,000 farmers. Okay, but again, there are different levels of messaging. You see, it's easy for a farmer to understand if a message just comes, there's new variety, get it from this shop. But if you look at maybe, for example, regenerative agriculture practices, which are knowledge intensive, so someone can receive that message, but interpreting it, if it's really cropping, if it's just 25 characters, it becomes a problem. So the CBAs, on the other hand, have like what we call mother demos, where wherever these technologies which are on the digital platform, they are also on the ground. So as I say, it's still kind of a challenge in terms of addressing the appropriate ratio, but we've seen like in terms of farmers' uptake, or even creating demand, especially for private sector. Private sector will tell you if they're coming up with new products and new, for example, interventions, they need like 35 to 40% demand creation for them to come in. Many have pushed messaging, they don't get that quickly. But with the CBS being on the ground demonstrating, we've seen 70 to 80% and crowding in. So it's a balance between those two. But we've seen more uptake, even if it comes like to farmer profiling. When they go through the VBAs, if Farmerline goes through the VBAs or digital players go through the VBAs, they register very high numbers. Because you see, as you say, there are so many players blasting messages to these farmers. So, and they've been, some have been conned actually. So for them to reply to these messages, they need somebody who can trust to assure them. So most of the time we've seen like when they have these VBAs, and critical, as we said, we don't want to create a parallel system. So they have to work through the government processes. And then in terms of, yes, that's Washington, that's an issue that we continually address. We've seen some companies, when they see a VBA work very well, they want to make them like an exclusive agent for them. And they say, we'll give you more money, just sell our brands. So when we work with the VBAs during the trainings, we actually bring all these players, the private sector, and ask them to respect this role that VBAs have to play in the system, including public good delivery. Because sometimes you'll find companies just coming in strongly with their product and forgetting about other issues, like, for example, if it's seeds, they'll forget about like soil and water conservation, because they just want to push that, and they feel if the CBA talks about these public goods, it's not like in their interest per se, it's like there. So we make it very clear, like these VBAs or CBAs are part and parcel of the extension system within the government. So when they realize like it's linked to within the government, then they tend, but those cases happen, they happen, yeah. Thanks.
I realize that I have less than 0 minutes to speak. The question of radio, integration of radio. I think this project was specifically looking at issues of how we use the mobile telephony. We do have other initiatives that look at radio. We've got a partnership with Farm Radio International in Burkina Faso, I think even in Ghana, and Ethiopia, where we are also improving that model. At some point, we'll bring everything together, but we need to develop strong models that can show that these things work. So it is still a most relevant media for us to use. And I think at this conference, we have not spoken enough about radio. But the issue of mixing is definitely open. We are really open to these partnerships, but we are testing them in different places, and we are going to bring them together at some point. So yeah. Was there any other question? I think Qureish answered the other one. Scalability. There's the issue of scalability. Our key strategy of scalability is building our programs within government systems. If we generate enough information and decision points for government for them to be able to show some of these interventions, their annual budgeting, in policy, in strategies. That is our scalability strategy. And what we are seeing in Kaduna is quite good in terms of the involvement of the NIMET within this project. We do see this happening into the other states as well at some point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hassan. And just to add on the scalability also, we work very closely with government and look at their flagship to really promote some of the works that we do so that we are really complementing and layering on what government does so that we ensure that scalability to other areas. Yes, I think to his question on Kaduna and scalability, yes, we hope that some of these areas that we go to we want to show how we can catalyze an area so that the government then can also take the initiative to I don't want to say copy and paste, but also to take the replica of that to other areas so that they see how that churned out. I know that question has come so many times. We are centered around Kaduna and
Now going to Oyo.
and now we are going to Oyo. We are in Nigeria, Kaduna, but we are going to Oyo states. Yeah. Yeah. Close to who? Thank you very much. If there are no any other question, I want to. Oh, there are questions online.
Yeah, so let's, there are like a couple of questions. Like the first one is from David for Assan. Can I just read it off? Like, yeah. I realize that one of the challenges to do with the data accuracy, but still wanted to know if the forecast data is contextualized and what level, and what if there are any particular challenges with conceptualizations.
Yeah, I think I already spoke to this issue that, to build accurate data set, you need to ground truth a lot of the forecasts that we make, particularly into small areas. So sometimes you give a forecast that, the weather, the season will start next week, but it starts like, 3 weeks later. That information that we feed back to NIMET is really key, because then they have information on a particular geography about when the season actually starts there. So then we start improving on our contextualized forecast based on this feedback, the citizen science that I spoke about. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Assan. So there is one more question. Let's wind it up in 1 minute. So it's from Naku. So it's mainly for entire AGRA team, they are asking it. So I would like to ask how AGRA and other stakeholders are looking at the issue of sustainability, since there is evidence that some of these projects end up with farmers unable to continue using such digital innovations. So he's mainly asking about the Ghana project that you were explaining about. So if you can able to give explanation on this. Thank you.
I think from the perspective of development interventions, there's always an issue of who bears the cost of some of these interventions. And that's really key. Institutions such as AGRA do recognize that, when the funding dries up, some of these programs will not happen. And that's why it's key for us to put critical learning questions within these projects for us to take the evidence and data and push it towards those that are able to continue with it. From a private sector perspective, we have been promoting what we are calling consortia. These are platforms where players within areas come and share knowledge for business opportunities, as well as for collection of information for policy making and access to farmers. So this is how we build our sustainability strategy. And there are a couple of success stories and sometimes not so good success stories. I see you're looking at your time. We are over, right?
Yeah. So like, are you fine? Like it's finished?
I think that's basically it. There will be cases where we will not succeed and these projects will dry out. But there are places where we are making successes and we're taking these lessons into other areas as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, we are at the end of the session. So I would like to thank Nixon for moderating the entire session, and also Qureish and Salmali, so for the great presentations. And also finally, Assan, thank you for taking all the questions and also for your beautiful presentation. So thank you all. Thank you for the entire AGRA team and also the participants who are attending this session. So thank you all. And we are moving to the next plenary session. It's going to happening in the main hall. So please move it to the main hall. Thank you all.